We begin tonight with the death of a Del Rio mother whose friends say her kindness touched everyone she met. 32-year-old Caro Peña, known to loved ones as Caro, died last night after police say she was stabbed multiple times.
It was a Thursday afternoon in June, the kind of afternoon where nothing feels dangerous. Sun overhead, people running errands, cars moving through intersections. A Sonic on the corner doing its regular lunch rush business. Kids somewhere finishing up their school day. Just a regular Thursday in a small Texas border town where everybody more or less knows everybody. Caro Peña had 5 children at home waiting for her. The night before, she had been standing in her kitchen in her house, the house she had worked and fought and rebuilt her life to be able to have, making sopa de fidio with her daughter, laughing, talking, just being a mom on a Wednesday night with food on the stove and her best friend nearby and nothing in the world to suggest that tomorrow was going to be anything other than another day. At 1:35 in the afternoon on Thursday, she called her best friend. The call went unanswered. Her friend was at work. She saw the notification. She thought she would call back later. She thought later was a thing that existed. Minutes after that call went to voicemail on East 10th Street in Del Rio, Texas, on one of the busiest commercial roads in the entire city, near the Sonic, in full view of passing traffic and security cameras and ordinary people going about their ordinary afternoon, 3 women surrounded Caro Peña. 2 sisters and their friend, all in their early 20s. 3 of them together, against one mother of 5 standing on a public street corner. And they stabbed her, twice in the back, once in the stomach. The first or second wound in her back punctured her lung. And here is the thing about Caro Peña that everyone who loved her will tell you without hesitation. She did not go down. Not immediately. Not without a fight. She was still on her feet when it ended. Still standing. Still her. Because Caro Peña had been fighting for her life in one way or another since she was a teenager, and she did not know any other way to be. But the wounds were too severe. She was rushed to Val Verde Regional Medical Center, then airlifted to San Antonio. And that evening, that same Thursday evening, while the people who loved her were still hoping, still praying, still making phone calls and sitting in waiting rooms, Caro Peña was pronounced dead. She was 32 years old. She had 5 children. She had a twin sister. She had a best friend who had missed a call at 1:35 in the afternoon and would carry that for the rest of her life. She had a community of people who called her the village, the woman who gave her last to everyone around her while raising 5 kids of her own. And she had been gone for hours before most of the country even knew her name. The 3 women accused of killing her were arrested within 2 hours of police being called. And the video of that arrest, specifically the image of one of those women smiling at a camera as she was walked to a police cruiser in handcuffs, is what the entire country is still processing. That smile, that moment, that complete and total absence of the weight that should have been visible on her face. That is where this story begins. But it is not the whole story. Not even close. Before we go any further into Caro's story, drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from. And if you cover cases like this one with us, please subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story. Now let's get into it. It is the summer of 2025 in America, and the country is loud in a very specific way. Social media moves so fast now that events become national news within minutes of being uploaded. A video recorded on a phone at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in a small Texas border town can be trending by 6 o'clock. Mugshots circulate before court dates are set. Viral moments travel faster than verified facts. And in that environment, in that constant, exhausting scroll of content and outrage and the next thing, real people get flattened into their worst or most sensational moments, and the full weight of who they were gets lost somewhere between the algorithm and the comment section. Caro Peña almost became that. A mugshot story. A smile at the camera story. A headline about the audacity of suspects in a Texas murder case. She deserves more than that. So before we talk about how she died, we are going to spend real time on who she lived. Del Rio, Texas sits right on the Rio Grande, the river that separates the United States from Mexico, directly across from Ciudad Acuña. Population roughly 35,000 people. It is a border town in the truest, most layered sense of that phrase. 2 languages, 2 cultures, 2 countries sharing a river and a complicated, interconnected history that stretches back generations. Most Americans have heard of Del Rio because of immigration news, border crossing statistics, political arguments that use the town as a backdrop without ever actually focusing on the people who live there. But the people who live in Del Rio know a different version of it. A town where you run into your neighbor at the grocery store and your cousin at the Sonic and your kid's teacher at church. A community that is small enough that when something happens to one person, it happens to everyone. Where grief travels block by block and everyone knows the name of the woman who was hurt before the evening news even airs. That is the Del Rio where Caro Peña spent her life, where she raised her children, where she built something real from scratch, where she became the village for everyone around her. And that is the Del Rio where she died on a Thursday afternoon on East 10th Street while the sun was still up. Caro Peña, Caro, 32 years old. She was a twin. Let that land for a second. She came into this world alongside another person. She had never existed in a version of life where her twin did not exist alongside her. And now her twin is navigating a world where Caro is gone, and there is no language adequate to describe what that specific loss feels like. She was also a mother, not of one child, not of two, but of 5. Her oldest was 17 years old. 5 children she was raising with the kind of hands-on, show-up everyday dedication that left everyone who witnessed it genuinely in awe. She had a house. She had a truck. She had built a life, deliberately with effort, after seasons that were not easy, and she was in it, fully in it, actively mothering 5 human beings who needed her and had her every single day until the day they didn't. Her childhood friend Zelina Ochoa met her years ago when they were both teenagers and both mothers at the same time, enrolled together in a program called Cradles in the Classroom. A school specifically designed for young parents who were trying to navigate homework and diapers and the terrifying uncertainty of early motherhood simultaneously. Both of them young. Both of them figuring it out. And from that very first chapter of knowing each other, Caro was already fully and completely herself. She taught Zelina how to change a diaper. She watched her son while she caught up on schoolwork. She gave her baby clothes, a television, a VHS player, videotapes for her first apartment. She gave all of it not because she had surplus, she did not, but because someone needed it and she had it, and for Caro that was the beginning and the end of the decision-making process. Zelina described it simply. She said, if you needed something and she had it, even if it was her last, she was going to give it to you. Even if it was her last. That is not a small thing to say about a person. That is an extraordinary thing. That is a description of someone whose generosity was not conditional on abundance. Who gave from whatever she had. Every time. Her best friend Cristina Salinas described a woman who had lived through difficult seasons. Made mistakes, as she said, the way all of us do when we are young, and had come back around. Had gotten her house. Had gotten her truck. Had gotten her life in order and was living it fully and without apology. Cristina said it like this. She had a past just like we all did. We made our mistakes when we were young, but she came back around. She got her house. She got her truck. She had her daughter. She was a great mom. She came back around. She came back around. 3 words that carry so much weight. She came back around. She did the work. She rebuilt. She showed up for her children every day, and she showed up for everyone around her too. And she did it while carrying the full weight of being a single mother of 5 in a border town where life is not easy and resources are not unlimited and nobody is coming to make it easier for you. And Zelina said the thing that her whole community has since repeated because it is the most accurate thing that has been said about Caro Peña. She said, you know how they say it takes a village to raise a family? She was the village. The village. For everyone around her. While raising 5 children of her own. She was 32 years old. She was cooking sopa de fideo with her daughter the night before she died. She had a 5:30 in the morning calling routine with her best friend. She answered when people needed her. She gave her last when someone needed it more than she did. She deserved 40 more years of life to keep being exactly that person. Wednesday night, June 25, 2025. Caro's kitchen. Sopa de fideo on the stove. Her daughter beside her. Cristina nearby. Just a regular evening in a regular home. The kind of evening that feels completely unremarkable when you are inside it and completely precious only in retrospect, only once it is gone. Nobody was worried about tomorrow. Nobody had any reason to be. Thursday morning, June 26th, Caro was already in contact with the people she loved. Christina later said that Caro would text her every morning to ask what their plans were for the day. Said she could call Caro at 5:30 in the morning and she would answer. Every morning. That was their rhythm, their friendship. Caro picking up before the sun was fully up because that was just who she was. Thursday afternoon, East 10th Street, Del Rio, Texas, the 800 block. A busy commercial corridor. A Sonic restaurant at the corner doing its regular afternoon business. Traffic moving. People going places. An ordinary Thursday in a town of 35,000 people. At 1:35 in the afternoon, Caro called Christina. Christina was at work. She missed it. She saw the notification. She thought she would call back. She thought there was time. There wasn't. What happened on that street corner in the minutes that followed is still under active investigation. Del Rio police have not publicly released a motive. They have not explained the nature of the relationship between Caro and the three women who confronted her. They have not detailed what sparked the confrontation or how it escalated to the point that it did. What they have confirmed and what witnesses and friends have corroborated is the outcome. Three women surrounded Caroline Peña on that street corner. Kitty Mia Diaz, 21 years old. Her younger sister Amaya Diaz, 19 years old. And their friend Kyandra Renee Faz, also 21. All three together. All three against one woman. And they stabbed her 3 times. Twice in the back, the first or second of those wounds penetrating her lung, which would ultimately be listed as the fatal injury. Once in the stomach. Images circulated briefly on social media locally, then more broadly before being taken down. Friends who saw them described Caro in a blood-stained pink shirt, surrounded by the 3 women, still on her feet, still standing, still there, because Caro did not go down easily. She had been fighting in one way or another since she was a teenager. She had navigated teen motherhood and hard seasons and the slow, deliberate work of rebuilding a life into something solid. She was not a woman who collapsed when things got hard. And even with stab wounds in her back and her stomach on a public street corner in the middle of a Thursday afternoon, she was still standing. Christina said it straight. That girl, she was a fighter. She was still standing her ground. Still standing her ground. At approximately 2:10 in the afternoon, Del Rio police received a call. Not to a crime scene. To Val Verde Regional Medical Center. Because somehow the exact circumstances are still unclear, Caro had arrived at the hospital with multiple stab wounds. Officers responded and immediately began tracing backward from the hospital to the street, from the street to the cameras, from the cameras to the people caught on them. Due to the severity of her injuries, Caro was airlifted from Del Rio to a trauma facility in San Antonio for emergency surgery. Christina rushed to the hospital before the transfer. She made it in time to say goodbye before Caro was flown out. She got to say goodbye. She did not get to say it and have Caro come home. At approximately 9 p.m. that evening, Caroline Peña was pronounced dead in San Antonio. She had been making dinner with her daughter fewer than 24 hours before. Del Rio police moved at a speed that, frankly, is worth acknowledging. From the moment the call came in at 2:10 in the afternoon to the moment of the first arrests is approximately 2 hours. In a murder case, with multiple suspects, on a busy commercial street where the scene had to be identified, documented, canvassed for witnesses, and cross-referenced with surveillance footage before any names could be confirmed. 2 hours. The way this happened is the way fast investigations always happen when the conditions are right. The conditions here were, in a grim way, almost ideal for investigators. The crime did not happen somewhere hidden. It happened on East 10th Street near a Sonic, a commercial corridor lined with businesses that all have exterior security cameras. It happened in the middle of a Thursday afternoon with pedestrian and vehicle traffic present. It happened in a town of 35,000 people where faces are recognizable and someone who lives there and commits a crime in public has a much smaller place to disappear into than they might think. From the hospital, investigators moved simultaneously in multiple directions. Officers at Val Verde began gathering whatever information was available about how Caro had arrived and what she had been able to communicate, if anything. Detectives moved to the 800 block of East 10th Street to process the scene, looking for physical evidence, pulling surveillance footage from every camera that had a line of sight to the location, identifying and interviewing anyone who had been in the area during the confrontation. What the footage showed, combined with witness accounts, built a picture quickly enough that within 2 hours, police had enough to make their move. At approximately 4 p.m., Del Rio officers arrived at a residence and placed Mia Diaz and Amaya Diaz under arrest. A local YouTube channel called Good Citizen in Del Rio happened to be present and captured the arrest on camera. The footage shows the two sisters being walked out of a home in handcuffs, escorted to a waiting police cruiser. And in that footage, in that specific, now widely circulated footage, Amaya Diaz, 19 years old, walking out in handcuffs on a murder charge, looked directly at the camera and smiled. She made a comment to the person recording. Something casual. Something that registered as a joke. And then she smiled. Caro Peña was still alive in a San Antonio hospital when that video was recorded. She had approximately 5 hours left. Her 5 children were somewhere without their mother, waiting for news that nobody wanted to have to deliver. And Diaz smiled at the camera. Kyandra Faz was arrested a short time later. All 3 were charged with murder. All 3 were transported to the GO Correctional Facility in Del Rio. All 3 were held with no bond. Police released a statement confirming the charges, confirming the arrests, stating that the investigation remained active, and noting that additional charges could be filed as evidence gathering continued. They gave no motive. As of the recording of this video, no motive has been publicly released. We do not know what the relationship was between these 3 women and Caroline Peña. We do not know what sparked the confrontation. We do not know if this was planned in advance or if it escalated in the moment from something that started smaller. We do not know if there is additional history between these parties that the investigation is still working to establish. What we know is that a woman who was making dinner with her daughter on Wednesday night was dead by Thursday evening. And 3 other women, all in their early 20s, are the reason why. This is the part of the story that does not fit together cleanly no matter how many times you try to make it work. Mia Diaz is 21 years old. In the weeks before her arrest, she was posting TikTok videos of herself with her 4-year-old son. Videos of the 2 of them together, laughing, being a mother and her child on camera the way millions of young parents do every single day. She posted a caption in early June, just weeks before the arrest, that read, in part, and I want to read this directly because it matters, "My Gigi, the one who saved my life in ways he'll never fully understand. The day he came into my world, he gave me a reason to be stronger, better, and keep pushing forward. Every smile, every hug, every moment reminds me how blessed I am. He is my greatest accomplishment, my biggest motivation, and the piece of my heart that walks outside my body every day. No matter how hard life gets, one look at him makes everything worth it." She ended it. "You will always be my greatest blessing." Read that, read it again, and then look at the mugshot, and try to reconcile those 2 images. The young mother writing about her son being the piece of her heart that walks outside her body, and the woman now charged with stabbing another mother 3 times on a public street corner. The gap between those 2 things is so wide that it genuinely does not process on first contact. You keep looking for the seam where one becomes the other and you cannot find it. Diaz is 19 years old. Kitty's younger sister. She is the one who smiled at the camera during the arrest. She is the one who, while being walked to a police cruiser in handcuffs on a murder charge while the woman she allegedly helped attack was still alive in a hospital, found something worth smiling about. Kyandra Faz is 21. The friend. The third person. Present for all of it. At the time of their arrest, none of the 3 had publicly known criminal histories, though police noted that additional charges were still pending and the full scope of the investigation had not been completed. And here is something that retired investigators and analysts who have looked at this case keep coming back to. The group dynamic. The way that 3 people together will sometimes do something that none of them would have done alone. It is a documented phenomenon in violent crime, the way that individual restraint erodes inside a group, the way that each person's willingness to act is inflated by the presence and apparent willingness of the others, the way that what starts as a confrontation between individuals becomes something categorically different when three people are acting in concert against one. None of that is an excuse. There is no version of this story in which 3-on-1 with weapons has an excuse. But it is a part of understanding what happened on East 10th Street. And understanding it matters if we ever want to prevent the next version of it. Caro's 5 children are still here. Her oldest is 17. Old enough to understand everything. Old enough to feel the full, unfiltered weight of this loss without the partial protection that very young children sometimes have. The blurring of comprehension that softens the sharpest edges of grief. He is 17 and he understands exactly what happened, and he is going to carry that understanding for the rest of his life. The younger ones will grow up in the long shadow of a memory that fades no matter how tight you hold it. They will know their mother through photographs and videos and the stories that the people who loved her will tell them. They will know she made sopa de fideo. They will know she answered the phone at 5:30 in the morning. They will know she was the village. But the living, breathing version of her, the warmth of her, the laugh that her friends described as infectious, the specific irreplaceable realness of her physical presence in a room that belongs only to the earliest edges of their childhood. And it will become harder to hold over time, not because they loved her less, but because memory is not loyal the way love is. 5 children. 5 entirely different relationships with this same loss. 5 futures that were permanently altered on a Thursday afternoon on East 10th Street. And Caro's twin sister. A twin. The person who shared a womb with her. The person who has never had a memory that predates Caro's existence. Who has spent 32 years living alongside someone who was both herself and completely her own person at the same time. That relationship, that specific, lifelong, pre-verbal bond between twins, produces a kind of loss that ordinary grief language does not cover. There is no adequate word for the shape of the absence that a twin leaves behind. There is no framework that makes it navigable in any normal sense. And then there is Christina Salinas, who posted on Facebook after Caro died and wrote what I think is the most heartbreaking thing written publicly about this case. She said, "I'm going to miss calling you at 5:30 in the morning and telling you, B, I need someone to talk to. Your exact words were always, talk to me, B. I'm going to miss you telling me, nah, no, you don't settle. You're a boss. I know that if I would have gotten out of work a few minutes earlier, I wouldn't have let you go down alone. You know that. My heart hurts. My kids hurt. You're gone." She missed a call at 1:35 in the afternoon. She did nothing wrong. Missing a phone call is something every human being does every single day without consequence. But the timing of it, the specific terrible timing of it, means Christina Salinas is going to live with that missed call for the rest of her life. Not because she failed. She did not fail. But because grief does not operate on logic, and the heart does not accept the distinction between what was reasonable and what she wishes she had done differently. Del Rio is grieving publicly and in real time. The phrase "the village" keeps appearing attached to Caro's name across social media and in news coverage and in interviews with her friends. Because the people who knew her cannot describe her any other way, and they need the world to understand what that means. Not a figure of speech. Not a metaphor. The actual village. The actual connective tissue of a community of people who all leaned on her and all found her there when they needed her. That is what is gone. This case does not require a forensic breakthrough to reach resolution. The arrests came fast. The surveillance footage exists and has been reviewed. Witnesses were present on a busy public street. The medical examiner has documented the injuries. The physical evidence from the scene has been collected. 3 suspects are in custody and charged with murder, held without bond. What it requires now is the machinery of the Texas criminal justice system. And that machinery is capable of moving with considerable force. Texas retains the death penalty. It is one of 27 states that does, and it is among the states that apply it most frequently. Whether the Val Verde County District Attorney pursues capital charges in this case depends on factors still being established. The exact nature of the conduct, the roles of each individual defendant, what the full picture of evidence shows about intent and planning and the specific acts committed on that street corner. What is already on the table, regardless of whether capital charges are pursued, is this: murder charges in Texas carry the possibility of life imprisonment. All three defendants, Kitty Diaz, Cookie Diaz, and Kyandra Faz, are facing that exposure. Their youth is not a legal shield. Their social media posts about their children are not a legal shield. The only thing that determines where this goes from here is what the evidence shows and what the district attorney decides to pursue. The acting in concert doctrine is significant here. Under Texas law, when multiple individuals participate in a criminal enterprise that results in a death, all participants bear legal responsibility for that outcome, not just the person who held the weapon. All three were present. All three were engaged. Whether one of them held the knife or all of them did is a detail that affects individual culpability gradations, but it does not remove any of them from the legal jeopardy created by that Thursday afternoon. From an investigative standpoint, the analysis of this case points to one near-certain strategic reality. Among three defendants, there is almost always a weakest link. The person who was least directly involved. The person who has the most to gain from cooperation. The person who, when sitting across from a detective with surveillance footage on the table in front of them, makes the calculation that their best option is to tell the full story of what happened and who did what. Whether that conversation has already happened is not public. What is public is that the investigation remains active, additional charges are pending, and the case is still being built. Caro's family is waiting. Her 5 children are waiting. Del Rio is waiting. It is a short word for the biggest question in this entire case. And it is the question that Caro's family and friends have been asking since Thursday evening when they got the call that she was gone. Why Caroline Peña? Why East 10th Street? Why Thursday afternoon? Why 3-on-1? Why with a weapon? Why in the middle of the day in front of cameras and witnesses and passing traffic? Why at all? Police have not released a motive. No relationship between Caro and the 3 suspects has been publicly established. No prior history between these parties has been confirmed. The confrontation itself remains, in its causes and its origins, a public unknown, even as its outcome is devastatingly clear. And that absence, that specific, grinding absence of the word why, is its own kind of cruelty for the people who loved her. Because grief is hard enough when you understand what happened and why. When you can construct a narrative that, however painful, has an internal logic. When you can say, this happened because of this and that led to that, and at least I understand the shape of it even if I cannot accept it. But not knowing why denies even that. Not knowing why means Caro's family is sitting with the full weight of her loss and the full weight of a question that has no answer yet, and they have to get up every morning and live inside that uncertainty while also being a mother's children, a sister's twin, a friend's missing 5:30 in the morning phone call. That is not a manageable thing to carry. Zelina Ochoa told media this, and I want to hold on to it. This wasn't something that happened in a back alley. This happened at the corner near Sonic on one of our busiest roads in broad daylight. The boldness of it, the complete and total disregard for cameras, for witnesses, for the 100 ways that committing a violent act on a busy public street in the middle of the day guarantees that you will be identified and caught. That disregard, that absence of the most basic self-preservation instinct, tells us something about the state of mind that produced this act. Whether it was rage so overwhelming that consequences stopped registering entirely in those moments. Whether it was a group dynamic so amplifying that individual judgment collapsed completely. Whether there is some other explanation that the investigation will eventually reveal. We do not know yet. What we know is that it happened. That moment, those statements, those voices, that specific gravity, will be the emotional center of this entire case. Not the surveillance footage. Not the forensic evidence. Not the arguments made by lawyers on either side. The people who loved Caro Peña, standing up in a courtroom and making sure the weight of her life lands on everyone in that room. That is what justice looks like in process. It is not complete. It never fully is. But it is what is available, and the people of Del Rio are going to pursue every inch of it. This case does not implicate a failure of forensic science. There is no cold case evidence chain to critique. The investigation moved quickly, the arrests were made, the system functioned at the speed it was designed to function. What this case implicates is something harder to legislate and harder to fix. And it needs to be said directly. 3 women stabbed another woman 3 times on one of the busiest roads in a city of 35,000 people in the middle of a Thursday afternoon. In front of cameras, in front of witnesses, in front of traffic, and one of them smiled at the camera 2 hours later. The question that raises the uncomfortable, systemic, community-level question is not about police performance. It is about what produced that act and that smile. What combination of factors creates a 19-year-old and a 21-year-old who are willing to do this in public, in daylight, and who do not appear in the immediate aftermath to register the weight of what they have done? Criminologists and retired law enforcement professionals who have commented on this case publicly have pointed consistently to the same factors: youth, group dynamics, social media's distortion of consequence perception, the way that a group of people together will cross lines that none of them would cross individually, and the specific way that moral reasoning can collapse entirely inside a rage-fueled confrontation when multiple people are reinforcing each other's escalation in real time. These are not excuses. They are explanations. And explanations matter because prevention requires understanding. Border communities like Del Rio are chronically underfunded relative to their needs. Violence interruption programs, community-based, credible messenger-led interventions specifically designed to interrupt escalating conflicts before they become fatal, exist in larger cities and have documented success rates. They are expensive to run and politically difficult to fund consistently, and small border towns rarely have access to them at meaningful scale. That gap, that specific, preventable gap between the violence intervention resources that exist in well-funded urban areas and the resources available in communities like Del Rio, is part of the systemic context of this case. It is not the cause, but it is a factor. And it is a factor that elected officials at the city, county, and state level have the power to address. Caro Peña did not have to die on East 10th Street. That is the systemic truth this case demands that we sit with. The Caro Peña case leaves 3 lessons that anyone watching this, anyone who cares about community safety, about violence prevention, and about what it means to truly honor a life like hers, needs to hear directly. The first lesson is this: public space is not inherently safe space, and communities need funded tools to keep it that way. This crime happened in the most public setting imaginable. A busy road, midday, cameras everywhere, witnesses present. And it happened anyway, because the people who committed it were either beyond the reach of deterrence in that moment or had never genuinely internalized that deterrence to begin with. Surveillance cameras do not stop violence. They document it and help solve it, and that matters enormously. But they do not prevent it. What prevents violence, what actually interrupts the moment before the knife comes out, is human intervention. Community-based violence interruption programs that put credible, trusted people in the spaces where conflict is most likely to escalate and give them the tools and training to de-escalate before blood is drawn. If you want to do something with what you have just learned today, contact your city council representative and your state representative and ask specifically what funding currently exists in your community for violence interruption programs targeting adults between 18 and 25. If the answer is none or inadequate, push for more. That is not a political ask. That is a public safety ask. Caro Peña deserved to walk home on Thursday. She did not get to. And community investment in violence prevention is one of the only tools we have to make sure fewer families receive that specific phone call. The second lesson is this: if you are a family member of a crime victim in an active case, you have rights, and you need to use them immediately. Texas has a Crime Victims' Rights Act. It is a real law with real teeth. It gives crime victims and their families specific legal rights during the investigation and prosecution of cases, including the right to be informed about the status of the investigation, the right to be notified of court proceedings, and the right to be heard during sentencing. Caro's family has those rights right now, today. If you are in a situation where a loved one has been the victim of violent crime, contact the Victims' Rights Coordinator at the District Attorney's Office handling the case. Do it in writing. Ask specifically what evidence has been preserved, what the current status of the investigation is, and what the timeline looks like for charges and court dates. Do not wait to be told. Ask. You have the legal right to ask, and the answer matters because families who are actively engaged in the process are better positioned to advocate for full accountability. The third lesson is the hardest one, and it is the one this case will leave behind long after the courtroom proceedings are finished. Answer the phone when the people you love call. This is not about blame. Christina Salinas did nothing wrong by missing a call at work on a Thursday afternoon. Missing phone calls is something every human being does every single day without consequence. This lesson is not about guilt, and it is not about assigning responsibility for what happened to Caro. It is about time. About the specific, irreversible, non-negotiable reality that we do not know which call is the last one. We never know. Caro called at 1:35 because Caro always called. That was who she was, that was the rhythm of their friendship, that was the texture of a relationship between two women who talked at 5:30 in the morning and showed up for each other and said, "Talk to me," be whenever the other one needed it. And that call at 1:35 was the last one. And Christina would give everything she has to have answered it. The practical change this lesson asks of you is genuinely small and costs nothing. When someone you love calls, your best friend, your parent, your sibling, your twin, the person who texts you every morning to ask what your plans are for the day, try to answer. Try to call back the same day. Try not to let too much time pass between reaching out to the people who are your 5:30 in the morning calls, whoever they are for you. Because the weight Christina is carrying is not the weight of having done something wrong. It is the weight of ordinary life, of being at work on a Thursday afternoon when a friend called, intersecting with an outcome that no one could have predicted and no one could have prevented by doing something differently. That weight is real. It is devastating. And it is a reminder that staying connected to the people we love costs almost nothing compared to the cost of losing the chance. Rest in peace, Caro Peña. 32 years old. A twin. A mother of 5. A best friend. A godmother. The village for an entire community of people who all needed her and always found her there. You were making sopa de video with your daughter the night before. You were still standing when they were done. You answered the phone when people called. You gave your last when someone needed it more than you did. You deserved 40 more years of exactly that. This channel is not going to stop saying your name. If you watched this far, drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from. Share this video because every share means one more person who learns who Caro was before they learn how she died. Subscribe if you are not already here, because this is exactly the kind of story that needs to keep being told with the care and the honesty it deserves. And before you close out of this video, call someone you love. Right now. Don't wait until later. Because Christina Salinas would give everything to have answered at 1:35. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one.